welcome to Tabor Talk. So I just finished listening to Joe's last podcast with Tim Kennedy. I'm going to do another video and devote more time to this. Really interesting podcast. I like Tim Kennedy a lot, although I think he's a conservative, let's face it, a right-wing guy. But they discuss a lot of things, like why the military supports Trump and continues to support Trump. Who are the Russians rooting for in this upcoming election, and who will bring more stability back to this country, Biden or Trump? But what I really want to talk about now is that Donald Trump retweeted a Joe Rogan clip. And this is actually from last year when Joe had Matt Taibbi on as a guest. And Joe was talking about how Biden's an old man. He's like an old flashlight, something like that. And by the way, I don't understand why Joe Rogan has such a hard-on for Joe Biden. He does not like him, can't stand him. In fact, after last year when Bernie was on, the Biden camp contacted Joe. They wanted to be on his podcast, and Joe said no. Joe Rogan does not like Joe Biden. There's something really weird going on there. And I'm going to be talking about that in some other videos in the future. But anyway, let me do this. I'm going to play a clip from Kyle Kulinski's Secular Talk, and he talks about this, the President of the United States retweeting a Joe Rogan clip. It's bizarre. Watch.
President Donald Trump tweeted a Joe Rogan video. This is wild, man. So I can't actually play the audio for you because that leads into like patent or copyright issues. And now there might even be a whole new Pandora's box opened up because he's on Spotify now and not just YouTube. And I don't know who like the parent company is that does the copyright stuff. He would let me use it, I'm sure, if it wasn't a giant pain in the ass and it wasn't like automatically set up to copyright strike everything that's out there that's a duplicate of his stuff. Anyway, I digress. So I can't play it for you, but basically what Joe says in this video, tweeted by President Trump, it's a podcast with Joe and Matt Taibbi. And Joe says, I think of Biden like going camping with a half-dead flashlight. And it's like, it works at the beginning, but you know it's not going to end well. He says something along those lines. And listen, that is kind of an apt description of Biden. But President Trump tweeted this, and it's really funny because I went back and I listened to some other parts of that podcast that he did with Matt Taibbi. Guys, Joe and Matt Taibbi are ripping Trump in that podcast as well. Of course, they go after Biden too, but they rip Trump in that podcast. They call him a sociopath. They talk about how he's probably on speed, which is a common thing. Joe and I talked about that when I was on his podcast as well, probably multiple times. We talked about that. And they also compared him to I think Taibbi compared him to like the worst people in the world. Like this is always how it works. You have these like decrepit leaders of countries who live to like 90 or 95, and they got all these like hardworking people who are good people in the factory, and they die at like 35 in industrial accidents and stuff. And it's just like there's no justice in the world in that sense. But they call him a sociopath. They say he's on speed, and they talk about how he's like one of the worst people in the world. And of course, Trump has this little clip that he tweets out as if it's indicative, as if like the entire conversation was pro-Trump and anti-Biden when it just wasn't. But isn't that crazy? And this actually reminded me, this is like what happened with Bernie too. Bernie got like a very tepid endorsement from Joe Rogan where Joe said, I'll probably vote for Bernie. And he was explaining how Bernie's been uniquely consistent his whole career. He has these positions, and he's been fighting for these positions, and he's just a good person who wants a better world for everybody. And so Joe casually said this in conversation on his podcast, and Bernie and his team clipped it out and tweeted it. And, Joe must feel like he can't talk about anything without, these are like literally people running for president, the president. These are the most powerful people on earth. And you can't just have a casual conversation without people trying to like clip stuff out and run it. And that's got to be a weird feeling. Because when you talk, like his podcasts are 2 or 3 hours, when you talk that much, you don't even know what you're saying half the time. I don't know what I'm saying half the time. And I talk less than he does. So that must be really, really weird. But it is funny how, whether it was Bernie and his team or Trump with this thing he tweeted, and everybody knows I love Bernie, everybody knows I don't like Trump, but it's amazing how politicians will like just grab onto anything that is popular and try to kind of make it their own in a way. Like even with the Bernie thing. How many times has Joe said on his podcast that like, man, Bernie's got some issues. His head is basically in the middle of his chest. He always talks about his terrible posture and how he doesn't look like he's like fit or whatever. And it's like, he says that, but Bernie will clip out the positive thing. With Trump, he says a million terrible things about Trump, but Trump clips out the one positive thing in the sense that Joe's going after Biden and he wants to highlight that. And, you know, everybody knows the story now because Joe went public with this, but guys, every single presidential candidate, after Bernie went on and that podcast blew up and everybody loved it, and you read the comment section, it's all these people who are like, I thought Bernie was crazy. Now I love him and I'm voting for him. Every other presidential candidate reached out to Joe to try to get on. Every other one. Amy Klobuchar, Mayor Pete, Joe Biden, their teams all reached out. And then they had the nerve to deny it when he mentioned it. They denied it. He's got emails. He's got proof. But this is how politicians are. It really almost shows like they embody the stereotype of them. You know what I mean? Like the stereotype is they're looking for a parade to jump in front of. That's what they're doing. That's what it is. And when you look at the number one podcast in the world, the Joe Rogan Experience, they're like, now there's a parade, and that's one I definitely want to hop in front of. And they all do it. Ones I love like Bernie, and ones I don't like Trump. But I couldn't believe the president of the United States tweeted a Joe Rogan clip just because he was casually dunking on Biden. I will say this, Trump is more online than any other president in history. I mean, that's obvious. Maybe even than any other politician. Maybe Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gives him a run for his money in terms of how online she is because she's always tweeting just like he's always tweeting. But God, he is so online. He's tweeting a Joe Rogan clip. Imagine he actually... What are you doing with all your time? That's the other thought I had when I was looking at this. Like, okay, my dude, you're the president of the United States. Go sign an executive order. Go end a war. Go have a meeting with a couple ambassadors or maybe some senators. What are you doing? Tweeting a Joe Rogan clip. I don't even care the backstory as to how he got it. Whatever the backstory is as to how he got that clip, it's time wasted. Go do some stuff that's going to help the world. That's your job. And he doesn't. He'll sit there and watch Fox News all day, you know, and waste as much time as possible. But actually, I'm going to contradict myself here. I take it back. I'd rather him do nothing because usually when he gets involved, he'll make stuff worse. So just do nothing. Watch Fox News all day. Watch Joe all day. If he watches Joe enough, at some point, he'll consider taking DMT. He'll consider taking DMT or mushrooms or like going to the Comedy Store to watch a set. Oh, man. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a new world when, like, presidential candidates and the president himself are using Rogan clips. It's almost like you get the sense now that podcasts, in a way, have eclipsed traditional TV. That's the sense I get. There was a story that came out the other day that Bill Clinton is now starting a podcast. I like what Farron Cousins said. He was like, now podcasts are becoming like Facebook. Facebook was cool until all of our parents got on it, and now it's like the least cool thing in the world. Podcasts are becoming the same thing. It's like they're super cool, and then now, like Bill Clinton has one. Every super rich elite asshole has one. And now everybody's like, maybe podcasts are not the move.
There you go. I really love Kyle Kulinski. I don't agree with everything, his opinions, but he really is good and very entertaining and smart, real smart guy. Okay. Good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding here on Tabor Talk.